License and registration right now. Is there a problem, officer? You've been driving that car for 3 blocks and keep checking your mirrors. That's suspicious. Checking mirrors is suspicious behavior? Don't get smart. Step out of the vehicle. On what legal basis? I don't need to explain myself to you. Out of the car. I'm going to ask you one time to reconsider what you're doing. Or what? Or you're going to spend the rest of your career explaining to a review board why you pulled over your own commanding officer on his first week.
Officer Shane Decker, badge number 1147, had been with the Riverside Police Department for 8 years. In those 8 years, he had accumulated 17 formal complaints, 12 of them filed by black motorists, all describing the same pattern. Traffic stops initiated without observable violations, escalating demands without articulable cause, and a particular aggression reserved for drivers of color in vehicles he had decided they had no business operating. Every complaint had been reviewed by the same internal affairs sergeant. Every complaint had been closed. Decker had never lost a single day of pay, never been reassigned, never been required to do anything beyond sign a piece of paper acknowledging the complaint had been filed against him. On the morning of April 22nd, at 7:54 a.m., Decker was running solo patrol on Cypress Avenue when he observed a black Ford Mustang GT 500 traveling southbound at the posted speed limit. The driver, a black man in a dark blazer, both hands on the wheel, driving with the measured precision of someone who had been behind the wheel of police vehicles for 2 decades, checked his mirrors twice in the span of 3 blocks. Decker pulled out behind him, followed for 2 blocks, and activated his lights. He had no observable traffic violation. He had no anonymous tip. He had no radar reading. He had a black man in an expensive car and 8 years of unchallenged habit. What Shane Decker did not know was that the man in the Mustang was Deputy Chief Aldous Grayson, newly appointed head of the Riverside Police Department's Field Operations Division, Decker's direct commanding officer as of 72 hours prior, a 24-year law enforcement veteran who had specifically chosen to drive his personal vehicle to work on his first full week to observe his new district without the formality of a department vehicle, and that his decision to pull that car over would end his career in full public view, cost the city $1.6 million, and produce a departmental reform so sweeping that it would be studied by police academies in 4 states. Before we go any further, drop where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you believe checking your mirrors while driving should never be enough to get a black man pulled out of his car, hit that like button and subscribe. Because what happened on Cypress Avenue on April 22nd was 8 years in the making, and it ended in 11 minutes. Deputy Chief Aldous Grayson had been awake since 5:15 a.m., not from anxiety, from discipline. 24 years in law enforcement had wired his body to treat the alarm clock as a suggestion rather than a requirement, something that went off after he was already up, already thinking, already moving through the mental preparation that preceded every significant day. April 22nd was significant. It was his 5th day as Deputy Chief of Field Operations for the Riverside Police Department, a mid-sized department in Southern California that had spent the better part of 3 years under informal DOJ scrutiny following a pattern of use-of-force complaints concentrated almost entirely in its patrol division. Grayson had been recruited specifically. The city manager had been direct about it in their second meeting. The department needed someone who understood street-level policing from the inside, who had credibility with rank-and-file officers, and who would not flinch from the accountability work the situation required. Grayson had listened, asked 3 questions, negotiated his terms, and accepted. He was 51 years old. He had grown up in Compton. He had joined the LAPD at 27 after 6 years as a Marine, including one deployment to Iraq that had clarified for him, with the kind of precision that only extreme circumstances produce, exactly what he valued and what he was willing to spend himself on. He had risen through LAPD steadily, detective, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, with a reputation built on 2 things: an operational mind that could read a scene faster than most of his peers, and a personal standard for conduct that he applied to himself before he applied it to anyone else. He had transferred to the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department 4 years ago when his wife's parents moved there for health reasons, and he had spent those 4 years as a division commander before the Riverside opportunity arrived. He drove a black Ford Mustang GT 500. He had bought it 3 years ago with money he had saved for 2 years specifically for it, because he had wanted a Mustang since he was 17 years old, watching one turn onto a street in Compton and deciding that one day he would own exactly that car. He drove it on weekends and on mornings when he was thinking through something complex, because the act of driving something powerful and well-made helped him think in the same way that some people thought better with music. On the morning of April 22nd, he had decided to drive it to the department rather than take the assigned vehicle because he wanted to see Cypress Avenue, the main artery through the district's highest complaint zone, without anyone knowing who was behind the wheel. He had been checking his mirrors, not out of nervousness, but out of habit. The habit of a man who had spent 24 years assessing his environment in all directions automatically. He had clocked the patrol car 2 blocks back when it pulled out of the side street. He had noted the make, the unit markings, the distance it maintained. He had continued driving at exactly the speed limit and waited to see what the officer behind him would do. He had seen this before, not from this side of it, but he had seen it. When the lights activated, Grayson pulled over smoothly, completely, to the rightmost edge of the lane. He put the car in park. He lowered all 4 windows, not just the driver's side, but all 4, so that everything inside the vehicle was visible from every approach angle. He placed both hands on top of the steering wheel at the 10 and 2 position and did not move them. He had done this before too, not because he was a cop, because he was a black man in America and he had learned the geometry of survival in traffic stops the way you learn the geometry of anything that matters, through repetition, through consequence, through the knowledge that the margin for error was smaller for him than for the person in the car 2 lanes over. Shane Decker approached from the driver's side. He was 34 years old, broad through the shoulders, with the particular walk of someone who had confused authority with ownership. He stopped at the window and did not introduce himself. He did not state the reason for the stop. He looked at Grayson, looked at the interior of the car, and said, "License and registration, right now." Grayson looked at him. He took in the badge number, 1147, visible on the chest, and he took in the nameplate, Decker. He filed both with the same mental precision he used in briefings. Then he said, "Is there a problem, officer? You've been driving that car for 3 blocks and you keep looking in your mirrors. That's suspicious behavior." Grayson's expression did not change. "Checking mirrors is suspicious behavior? Don't get smart. Step out of the vehicle." "On what legal basis?" Decker stepped closer. His hand moved to his belt. Not to his weapon, but to the center of his belt, the posture of someone who wanted you to think about the weapon without touching it. "I don't need to explain myself to you. Out of the car." 3 things happened in the next 4 seconds that Decker did not notice. First, a city bus traveling northbound on Cypress slowed for its stop across the street, depositing 11 passengers onto the sidewalk, several of whom looked toward the flashing lights. Second, a woman walking a terrier on the sidewalk behind the Mustang stopped and raised her phone. Third, the exterior dash cam on Decker's patrol car, which had activated automatically with the lights, captured the full width of Cypress Avenue in its wide-angle lens. Every person, every angle, every second. Grayson kept his hands on the steering wheel. "I'm going to ask you one time to reconsider what you're doing." Decker leaned down to window level. "Or what? Or you're going to spend the rest of your career explaining to a review board why you pulled over your own commanding officer on his first week." Decker's jaw tightened. He had heard lines like this before. People said things during traffic stops. They claimed connections, claimed titles, claimed consequences that never materialized. In 8 years of pulling people over, Decker had learned that the more someone talked about who they were, the less likely it was to be true. "That's a new one," he said. "Get out of the car." "I'm going to reach into my jacket pocket," Grayson said, and his voice had taken on a quality that was different from the preceding exchanges. Not louder, not harder, but more formal, more deliberate, with the specific cadence of someone who was now operating in official capacity. "My right hand is moving to my left interior jacket pocket. I'm retrieving my credentials." He moved slowly. His right hand came off the wheel, moved to his blazer, reached inside, and produced a slim black credential case. He opened it with one hand and held it flat against the window frame where Decker's Bodycam, still running on his chest, could capture it without obstruction. The credential case held two items side by side. On the left, a Riverside Police Department identification card with his photograph, his name, and his rank in bold type beneath the department seal. Deputy Chief of Field Operations. On the right, his new department-issued badge, gold, newly minted, the rank designation engraved clearly. Decker looked at the badge. He looked at the photograph. He looked at the name. He looked at the rank. He looked at Grayson's face. The morning traffic on Cypress Avenue continued its indifferent movement. The woman with the terrier had not lowered her phone. The bus passengers on the opposite sidewalk had formed the loose, attentive cluster of people who know they are watching something that will matter later. A cyclist coming south had stopped at the curb and was watching over his shoulder. Decker's mouth opened. A sound started and didn't complete itself. His right hand, which had been resting on his belt, dropped to his side. His left hand, which had been braced against the roof of the Mustang, came away from the car entirely. Grayson let the credentials sit in the window frame for 4 more seconds, long enough for the body cam to read every detail, long enough for the 11 people on the sidewalk and the woman with the phone and the cyclists and the bus to all register what they were looking at. Then he said quietly, with the precision of someone closing an argument that was never really an argument, "Officer Decker, step back from this vehicle. Call your sergeant to this location, and do not touch your radio for any purpose other than that call until your sergeant arrives." Decker stepped back. He did it the way people step back when their legs move before their brain has fully processed the instruction. He stood on the sidewalk beside the Mustang with his hands at his sides and his body cam running, and the full weight of what he had done landing on him in the sequential, inevitable way that reality lands when you have been operating for a long time in the absence of consequence, and consequence finally arrives. Grayson opened his door. He stepped out of the Mustang. He straightened his blazer. He was 2 inches taller than Decker, and he stood with the posture of someone who had commanded rooms and briefings and operations, and who was now standing on a public sidewalk on Cypress Avenue, calmly, waiting for a sergeant. He did not raise his voice. He did not speak again until Sergeant Patricia Voss arrived at 8:09 a.m. Sergeant Voss had received Decker's radio call at 8:02 a.m. He had given her his location and told her he needed a supervisor. He had not told her why. When she pulled up and stepped out of her unit and saw Decker standing on the sidewalk next to a Mustang and a black man in a blazer who was looking at her with an expression she could not immediately categorize, she walked toward them with the measured pace of someone who had learned that arriving at a scene too fast told you less than arriving at the right speed. She saw the credential case before she reached them. Grayson held it open at chest height, facing her. She stopped walking. She read the name. She read the rank. She had received the department's all-hands briefing about the new Deputy Chief of Field Operations 3 days ago. The briefing had included a photograph. She looked at the photograph in the credential case. She looked at Grayson. She turned to look at Decker with an expression that Decker would later describe to his union representative as the worst thing he had seen in 8 years on the job. "Deputy Chief Grayson," she said, "I apologize for... What do you need from me right now?" "I need Officer Decker's body cam unit secured as evidence," Grayson said. "I need the dash cam footage from his unit preserved. I need a log of this stop timestamped from the moment of light activation, and I need his sergeant of record notified that he is temporarily removed from solo patrol pending administrative review." He paused. "And I need someone to make sure those people," he nodded toward the sidewalk, where the woman with the phone was still recording and 2 other bystanders had joined her, "are given the precinct's non-emergency line in case they're contacted as witnesses." Sergeant Voss produced a notepad. She wrote the time at the top of the page, 8:09 a.m. She looked at Decker, badge and cam. Decker unclipped his body cam unit first. He held it for a moment before placing it in Voss's outstretched hand, the specific hesitation of someone who understood what was on that recording and would have given almost anything to have 10 minutes alone with it. Then he reached for his badge. His fingers fumbled with the clip once before it came free. He placed the badge in Voss's hand without looking at her. The metal was warm from being against his chest all morning. Voss bagged both items. She called dispatch for an evidence log. She gave Decker his supervisor's direct number and told him to call it immediately and stand by his unit until relieved. Grayson watched all of this from beside his Mustang. When Voss finished, he told her he would be at the department in 20 minutes and that he expected a full copy of the morning's footage on his desk by 9. He got back into the Mustang. He pulled out onto Cypress Avenue. He drove the remaining 6 blocks to the department at exactly the speed limit and checked his mirrors twice. The internal affairs investigation opened before 10 a.m. and was completed in 9 days, not because the investigation was simple, but because the evidence required no interpretation. Decker's Bodycam captured the stop from initiation to badge surrender with unbroken audio and video. The dash cam captured the full exterior scene, including the precise moment of light activation and the clear, observable fact that the Mustang had committed no traffic violation in the preceding 2 minutes of footage. The witness phone recording, uploaded to social media by the woman with the terrier within 40 minutes of the stop, had been viewed 340,000 times by the time the investigation concluded. The review of Decker's personnel file produced the 17 complaints that had accumulated without consequence over 8 years. The internal affairs investigator assigned to the case noted in her preliminary report that complaints 4, 7, 9, and 13 had each independently described the same pattern: stops initiated without observable violation, escalating demands when questioned, and a consistent targeting of black motorists and higher-income vehicles on Cypress Avenue and its connecting streets. The investigator's report contained a single line that was later reprinted in the Los Angeles Times, the San Bernardino Sun, and the Associated Press. The documentation required to end Officer Decker's pattern of conduct has existed in this department's files since his 3rd year of service. The department chose, repeatedly, not to use it. Decker was terminated 31 days after the stop. His union filed for arbitration. The arbitration panel reviewed the body cam footage, the dash cam footage, the witness recording, and the 17 complaints in chronological order. The panel denied arbitration in 26 days. His California Peace Officer certification was submitted for permanent revocation review to the Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training. The revocation was granted. He could not work in law enforcement in California. He applied to 2 departments in Nevada. Both background checks returned the body cam footage and the arbitration denial. Neither department moved forward with his application. The civil lawsuit was filed by 3 of the 12 black motorists whose prior complaints against Decker had been dismissed without investigation. The complaints had been dismissed. Their experience had not ended. They had spent years knowing that what happened to them had been real, documented, and ignored. The Cypress Avenue stop, the footage, the publication, the visibility, gave them something they had not previously had: a public record that made their private accounts irrefutable by association. Their attorney filed a consolidated civil rights action against Decker personally, the Riverside Police Department, and the City of Riverside, alleging systematic racial profiling, negligent supervision, and intentional failure to address a documented pattern of civil rights violations. The city's legal team reviewed the complaint history, the 13 years of closed complaints, the investigator's report, and the footage. They opened settlement discussions in the 3rd week of the lawsuit. The settlement was finalized 4 months later, $1.6 million. The city's contribution was $940,000. The department's professional liability carrier covered $420,000. Decker's personal liability, established at $240,000 after the court found his actions fell comprehensively outside authorized conduct, was attached to his assets. He had a house. He had savings. After the judgment, he had substantially less of both. Deputy Chief Aldous Grayson did not attend the settlement announcement. He was in the field. He established the Grayson Accountability Initiative within the department within 60 days of the stop, a new internal protocol requiring all traffic stop data to be reviewed monthly by an external auditor for racial disparity indicators, with automatic escalation to the deputy chief's office for any officer whose stop demographics showed a statistically significant deviation from the district average. The protocol required 0 complaints to trigger review. The data itself was sufficient. It was the first protocol of its kind in Riverside's history and one of the first in Southern California. The Cypress Avenue Community Safety Act, proposed by the city council member whose district included the stop location and drafted in consultation with Deputy Chief Grayson, required all municipal police departments in Riverside County to implement third-party complaint review for any officer accumulating 5 or more unresolved complaints within a 36-month window, and to publish annual stop data disaggregated by race and vehicle type on the department's public website. The act passed the County Board of Supervisors unanimously. It was signed on a Tuesday. Grayson was not present. He was running a training session for 12 new patrol officers on constitutional stop requirements. The settlement proceeds, distributed among the 3 plaintiffs, were used in part to fund the formation of the Cypress Avenue Legal Defense Collective, a community organization providing free legal consultation to Riverside residents who had experienced traffic stops they believed were racially motivated. The collective partnered with 3 law school clinics and handled 41 intake consultations in its first 6 months of operation. Grayson's Mustang sat in the department parking lot every day after that. Same car, same parking spot. He drove it in on Tuesdays and Thursdays specifically, the days he conducted unannounced floor visits to the patrol division. He wanted the officers to see it. He wanted them to know that their commanding officer moved through the same streets they patrolled, and that he was watching the same things they were watching, just from a different position. One afternoon, 3 months after the stop, a patrol officer who had been with the department for 2 years asked him about the car. They were in the break room. The officer had grown up in Riverside and had driven a Mustang briefly before he could afford to keep it. He asked what trim level it was. Grayson told him. The officer nodded. "That's a serious car for checking mirrors on Cypress," he said. Grayson looked at him for a moment. "Every car is a serious car when the person driving it has the right to be where they are," he said. He poured his coffee and left the break room. The officer stood there for a moment, then went back to work. Shane Decker completed the processing of his civil judgment from a rented apartment in Arizona, where he had relocated after the department termination. He had found work in private insurance claims assessment, a position that required no certification, no badge, and no authority over other people. His name returns 290,000 search results. The first result is the Bodycam footage. The second is the arbitration denial summary. The third is a piece in Police Chief magazine titled "When the Driver You Profile is the Chief, the Decker Case and What It Reveals About Institutional Accountability Failure." The Mustang is still black, still a GT 500. It still turns heads on Cypress Avenue when Grayson drives it south on Tuesday mornings, both hands on the wheel, checking his mirrors the way a man checks his mirrors when he has earned every right to be exactly where he is. If you believe a man who spent 24 years in law enforcement should be able to drive to work without being pulled over for checking his mirrors, share this story with someone who still thinks these stops are about traffic. What would it take for departments to act on complaint patterns before it reaches the commanding officer? Drop your answer in the comments, and if you believe 17 complaints should have ended this 8 years before Cypress Avenue, subscribe. We are not stopping until accountability stops waiting for the person with the badge to be the one who finally can't be ignored.